So then, we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Tzayelic lineage. So then, we can understand the time of the end as per Yeshayahu the prophet. We find layer of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste from many centuries. As we read then Yeshayahu the prophet, we find these understandings then not only related with the 65th and 66th chapter, but then as we read then the 61st chapter, then there are similitudes as far as what the Messiah did and what he explained as far as autumn feast. So then, as we read then the 65th and 66th chapter of Yeshayahu, then we can layer these understandings with Revelation, sections of the 20th chapter, and most importantly the 21st. Revelation is not complicated. In fact, this Megillah is somewhat simple, because the Creator never makes it complicated. He has no reason for making it complicated. As far as we can understand the 21st chapter, let's then read what the Messiah has said. Extremely important. As then Moshe himself, known as Moses, said, when the Messiah comes, or the Savior comes, or the promised prophet comes, then he must be listened. And then obviously, as the Messiah then did his work, then Yohanan saw, because of the presence of the Messiah himself, then the former heaven and the former earth has then gone. And then the understanding is this: what we then learned yesterday as far as then these existing age burnt and done away with, and then the souls of the people who were then in torment, known as the first death. Then when the earth is burning comes the second death. So in the analysis of those people in torment at the very end, then they are analyzed not because the Creator made a mistake. It's because then He's given us a chance of understanding His precision and 100% proper judgment. Then those souls are thrown into this earth while burning, as the Messiah explained, then the end of this age. Yohanan then has mentioned through the Messiah in what he has shown him. He saw then the former heaven and the former earth then gone. He saw the burning of the previous age, and he then saw the new earth then re-established, linked up directly with Zechariah. As we read, he saw then Jerusalem, the set-apart city. Precisely what then Moses did when he received the understandings while he was in the desert. That's precisely what then Yohanan saw. Let's try to understand a situation. We are not speaking of a temple. We are not speaking of a glorious and mighty city. You must be very cautious as far as reading this holy city as a place where you find riches and you find gold and you find silver and you find precious stones, and then linked up with the ephod of the priest or high priest and never existed. Understanding these situations of riches is not related with the city in the future. What we are speaking of is what Moshe saw in the desert. The only distinction is there is no sin. This grandiosity of reading the 21st chapter and the city coming from heaven and so many riches and this and any other, it was made it up. Yohanan saw a city coming from heaven, establishing the new capital of this new world, precisely because we are reading the 21st chapter. But it's not like what they are reading. In pavement of gold and then silver and stones of many kinds. And then the ephod of the priest and turban. Can you imagine? A priest of the Most High using turban. It doesn't even make sense. Hebrews use veil. Can you understand the manipulation of the Hebrews when they began to rewrite the holy instructions for their own benefit? The Holy Ark of the Covenant was found in 82. And then Ronald, when he entered the cave where the holy objects, mostly then the holy object of the Ark of the Covenant was at, he found some of the items related with the tabernacle, but then there were no turbans, there were no ephods, or no kind of clothing of the priests. If the time of the restoration period was so extremely important based from what we understand of the priests then linked up with the 21st chapter, and then with some sort of riches related with ephods, and then the front with many kinds of gems and stones and blah blah blah, doesn't even make sense. Firstly, then, the priests, they never used turbans. It doesn't make any sense. Turbans are used by the desert people, the sons of Ishmael. Why do they use turbans? Because they are people of the desert. They are most of the time involved with the wind and with the sun and with sand. They simply cover their faces with a cloth around their heads. Now let me ask you this, what do they do with a turban in the tabernacle? In the very division of human beings, sinful scoundrels, as clean as they are except the Messiah, then involving themselves with its turbans, doesn't even make sense. So when we read the 21st chapter, we are not talking about this grandiosity of city. We are speaking of modesty. When these modern holy instructions were put together, you can be sure of it, they didn't scandalize only Revelation. They had to be linked up with the junky understanding of the Torah and the modifications they did for their own benefit. 62nd chapter of Yeshayahu never mentions of then the people of the Creator being involved with the turbans. It's directly related with Ezekiel, the 37th chapter, and then the restoration of the authority of both sons. The first son, 61st chapter, speaks of then the Moadim. The second chapter speaks of the sons of Ishmael, the restoration of the trade and honesty in those traits learned so long ago by King Ishmael. As the Messiah then was mocked when he entered the holy city on a donkey, they were expecting a grandiosity of Savior in destroying then the Roman Empire, and then put to death those damn scoundrels and so on and so forth. And the Messiah came and completed the spring feast. If people were interested then in the holy instructions, they wouldn't be watching for a rich person, a military guy that would set up the world upside down. Similarly, when the Messiah was explaining these areas and then giving parables, because the Messiah was finding a way of having the people to filter themselves. That's why so many times he was using then parables related with riches, because people were absolutely crazy regarding riches. So as the Messiah was explaining those parables, those people who are inclined for riches rather than the holy instructions would filter themselves out of it. Now the same problem with these riches causing so many evils, then obviously when you read the Revelation, the 21st chapter, and when you understand Hebrews do not use turbans, that it makes no sense using turbans then in tabernacle. And then comes out the priest with a turban, and then some sort of ephod, and then many kinds of stones, and then you find pavement of gold. Come on. But the most important part of it, then behold the tabernacle of Elohim. He uses the word Elohim, the holy word of the Creator based from the 7 functions. Then is with his people, and he then lives with them. The center of the entire understanding of the new earth then is Jerusalem based from tabernacling. It doesn't even state a temple. Now when you read the Greco-Roman translation, you always get yourself scandalized. But then you generated perceptions in your understanding and they don't exist. Repetitious junk is not going to make you wiser. The more you repeat, the stupider you get. Because repetition then locks you in ignorance. You simply can't learn. Then he states, every ear, then and every eye. Obviously they will hear the truth, and they will observe the truth, and they will then be cleaned from trials. When we find these understandings true, you read then chapter 1:8. It's a very important chapter, because at some point when you read this chapter, you find then the great holy city. The great is not because the city is big, it's because of the presence of the Creator. So can you understand how many words people get the wrong perception? Oh, the great city. Oh, they are talking about a huge city with riches and then temple and In the great city, it's because of the presence of the Creator. And he was always modest when he was in the earth. And then comes saying, Allah's, Allah's, that great city that was clothed in fine linen, obviously explaining then Babylon. So let's understand then, during the time these instructions were then translated. Back then, the most important at the time was becoming rich. Then you find a mixture of Babylon and a mixture of the new city mixed up, because riches are then synonymous of being favored of God. And it's got nothing to do with it. If this was the case, the Messiah should be rich, and he wasn't. What's the most important? Understand tabernacling. Even Daniel got a short answer from the angel. Every person is involved with a tendency of forget about tabernacling and then get rich, get involved with the plans, grandiose plans of the future, and then more trade and more this and that and the other, and linking up the nations, and Daniel got caught in the midst of it. What was the most important for Daniel during his time when the understandings were then closing? Not even Daniel himself perceived that his time then, as far as the understandings of the instructions of the Gentiles were ending, because he was asking so many questions, but he didn't understand. His people were returning then to the Holy Land, and the Moadim must then at the time, should have, when it's 100% been restored. And Daniel doesn't mention the last chapters, as far as we can read. He's concerned with the situation. Not even a prophet was able to escape from the deceitful sections of riches and plans and these and that and the other. And what about tabernacling? So you read then, the 61st chapter explains of the Messiah, tabernacle. 62nd speaks of then those people of the desert using turbans, those people who were then doing trade from the lineage of Ishmael. Where do you find a priest of the Most High related with gems and stones and riches and gold and then a turban? In the midst of tabernacling, in the tabernacle of the Most High using turban. Does it have a wind in there? Or should they be concerned with a veil in front of their faces, so then the separation of the holy and the most holy should be evident? But then those people who are disregarding the holy instructions, they are stupid by nature. Do they have a chance of changing? Of course. They must understand the holy instructions are then as fresh as if Moses was then writing 5 minutes ago. The existing modern instructions, they are repleted with modifications. But as you read the instructions, as you want the understandings, then as you read, you can filter it. you can find those areas who are then bent. You can't regard the copy of a modern time then be infallible, replete with mistakes. But these mistakes, they don't diminish the understanding of tabernacling. They show the weak side of human beings trying to compare themselves with the riches. And the Messiah said riches are deceitful. So did the Messiah then understand they would scandalize the instructions? Of course. Not even his entire year of spending with his people was recorded. Then they mixed. When he came back from the inferno or Sheol, they mixed with his 40 days in the desert as far as his fasting. They made such a salad out of it. But you don't have to be a genius of understanding them. When he came back from Sheol, obviously he would spend an entire year. That is the calendar time of the spring feast and autumn feast in the entire section of Moadim. If you had 1,000 years given on your behalf, wouldn't you want your people properly learned? Of course you would. When you finish a project, it takes you then a year for you to do it. Wouldn't you want your people to do it properly? Or do you spend a year making a nice plan, then you take 5 minutes to explain and people don't understand, but yeah, defeats your own purpose. So earthly riches are extremely deceitful. It is so deceitful when the people, they read the instructions, they don't have the minimum desire of finding out further. They consider the writings infallible and they are reading junk and make themselves stupid, only to find out when they die they are straight down in torment. So Hebrew people involved with tabernacling, they do not use turbans. They always use veils. Every time they close their eyes and in front of them there is a veil that makes the separation from the Holy of Holies and the Most Holy. If you are on a go using then turbans, would you be interested in the Holy of Holies? No. You're interested in trade. You are interested then in packages. You are interested in camels. You are understanding then that you have to have water and taking care of the caravans and then linking up this nation and the other and then making transactions and money and they made it a holy creator on the go. So then when 21st chapter then is read, try to understand yourself what Moses received when he was in the desert. It's a modest place. And there is a combination of the first and second tabernacle services in a new earth, no sin. And remove from your mind these understandings of pavement of gold and then riches of beyond measure and then stones of this and the other. Don't use those. The Creator does not have to show himself as powerful via this junk. The most riches we can have when you are observing then a river, a stream of water, a plant, a flower, the animals. Then you find then space, you find planets, you find extreme velocity that we are in this universe. These are the riches, and obviously tabernacling what his Son has done. Now from these riches of creation, then you are concerned with paper money, you are interested in gold, silver, precious stones, and those are not riches. Should we be responsible with the resources? Absolutely, but the resources are not the focus. The Messiah himself said, as then you are taking care of the path, then the rest of it comes on time. But when he does, so then you should focus furthering regarding tabernacling, because enhances then your path so you can continue on and have somebody else going with you. So then, the 21st chapter and the 22nd chapter explains these topics extremely simple. The Messiah was always wise. And let's make something very perfectly clear. As far as when the Messiah then was involved with a plant, if I remind myself properly, I think it was a fig plant. They didn't have fruit on time. And then the Messiah was angry and he cursed the plant. The Messiah does not curse. Why would he curse the plant for it? It is mysticism. The Messiah never mishandled the understanding and the functions he had. Cursing a plant made by the Creator himself was a misuse of power. He never did. So the understanding of this mysticism is precisely then many people they think Moses then was involved with the 10 plagues. Those were the dreams of Pharaoh. The understanding is precisely then how then the Messiah is going. Firstly, he leads then on a white horse. Understand, horses were never encouraged in the Holy Land. When horses were found, then they were to be hamstrung. And then you find the scoundrel of the Messiah then on a horse, leading then destruction and death and famine. Can you believe these? And then cursing a plant for not having figs. What, was the Messiah stupid then? Didn't understand it was not the time for figs? He didn't curse the plant. During the time of the completion of the spring feast, the Messiah was perfect. During his ministry, not a word spoken was spoken in haste. They were practicing his coming for more than 1,000 years, and then the Messiah would curse a plant. You have to be joking. So then our perceptions reading the modern translations are extremely mixed up with mysticism. You have to understand what the Messiah did, Leviticus the 23rd chapter, what he should do and shouldn't do. Do we not read from the instructions, not an evil word came out of his mouth? Cursing is evil. So is the instruction then contradicting itself? No, because the Messiah never under any condition cursed anybody or any plant. He warned the people of their lack of obedience, and he was very stern as far as the holy instructions and how they should be handled. Now, outside of a season, himself being hungry and then cursing a plant is absolutely unthinkable. The event simply was there, and he was explaining as far as what he was teaching his people. What's the understanding of eating and being satisfied? It was with the word, with the instructions. As his people, they were asking questions, it was out of season to eat. His people wanted the power of the Spirit, and the Messiah was explaining via this incident, or then this event of not having the fruit. It's not the season yet. Then you have the understanding of when he was completing the spring feast versus when he came back from Sheol and spent the whole year with his people. Based from the layers of the prophets and the content and context of every event, you can identify this was prior, this was after. Next time we must evaluate very properly when the Messiah was explaining those parables, what he meant, and how he said in such a way where then the people then involved listening, they removed themselves on their own because they had evil desires and they didn't understand what the Messiah meant. However, understanding or not, the tendency at the end was on behalf of riches. That's why those who are enlightened, they hear it and they understand in a certain form. Next time we will explain then what the Messiah did so we can learn and be in line with the Messiah. Because if we don't take initiative in reading and understanding, then the Messiah is not going to take us by the hand and take our burdens from us. He had to bear burdens of this world he wasn't even guilty of. Then because of our minor problems, then people, they are thinking that they're going to remove their burdens for them. Yeah, crazy. It's such a perception of the Savior that doesn't exist. So the Matthew, Luke, Mark, then in Yohanan. We must start obviously with Matthew because he was then a priest from tabernacling. Then Yohanan was a shaliach. Then we leave those couple of Gentiles at the end. Those are for reference only. And then we come to these understandings and becoming more acquainted why the Messiah said what he said. So please stay tuned, much more coming up.